My name is Philippe. I'm a philosopher, and I'm interested in how architecture shapes and defines our lifestyles. I'm taking you with me to explore some of the most unusual living environments on the planet, to better understand what's behind them and share what they have to offer. After a 5-hour flight from Paris, I arrived in Svalbard, a Norwegian archipelago situated on the Arctic Circle, at a latitude of 79 degrees north. From there, I took a second flight at Longyearbyen, destination Ny-Ålesund, the world's most northerly civilian settlement. In 1966, Ny-Ålesund started out as a Norwegian scientific station, but became an international research institute in 1992. Nowadays, it hosts dozens of scientists of all nationalities and languages who carry out hundreds of research programs in laboratories all year round. How do men and women manage to live in this cold, barren environment at the far corner of the world where 6 months of non-stop daylight is followed by 6 months of non-stop nighttime? Making my way towards the village, all I can see is a lunar landscape in which, at first sight, nothing seems very conducive to human settlement. Just a dozen permanent employees look after between 30 and 180 research scientists who come here every year, staying for several weeks, sometimes months. So how are these scientists, all from different backgrounds and nationalities, able to forge links with each other and with the surroundings in such inhospitable conditions? Maarten Lunen is a biologist in charge of the Dutch research station and has been coming to Ny-Ålesund for 30 years to study birds. This strange place has become his second home. Hello.
Hey,
Nice to meet you.
Bonjour.
Hello, Philippe.
Welcome in my town.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So this is it?
Yeah, this is Ny-Ålesund with a wonderful view on the glacier.
Oh yes, I can see it. I've never seen anything like it before. It's absolutely magnificent. So whereabouts do you live then?
In a small hut just on the other entrance of town. You just see the first part of the London houses. I have to put my bike here.
So are there only scientists in Ny-Ålesund?
Yes, it's the biggest international station in the Arctic, and it's the most northerly village in the Arctic.
So can they just settle down wherever they like?
No. It's really organized. There are 9 countries who have a station up here. Countries do have different stations. This is the British station. We have the Indian station, the German station.
Okay, but why do all these scientists want to come here to Ny-Ålesund?
It's an important place because the climate change is changing and lots of the research is related to climate change up here. The science is very diverse. It's not, I'm a biologist, but we have geologists, we have glaciologists, permafrost people, so that's all studied, but also there's a rocket range over there. There's a telescope where they look at quasars at the end of the galaxy. It's not just polar research for ice and animals, but it's much wider. So I live here, and it was built on the other side of the fjord in 1912.
Really?
It was moved here in 1950.
So it was dismantled and moved here?
For Spitsbergen, it's a very old hut. Yeah, it's the oldest house in town.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's.
So it's the historical part of the village. And so were other houses built with the same techniques?
Yeah, it's a kind of Scandinavian styles. I'm very happy to live here, but there's no water in this house. This is the most original one. It's the museum hut, more or less, which I live. But then the others, they do have water. I only have electricity, but also internet.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch
on mobile devices or the big screen, all for free. No subscription required.
Okay, this is what we call the laboratory. It's just where we leave all the samples and things like that.
Oh yes, I can see them on the table. What's inside all these test tubes, Martin?
This is from Utah, a Japanese student who's joining me, who, for DNA samples, he put a lot of water through a sieve, and then he's collecting the DNA and he will analyze what's in the water.
Ah, okay.
So it's modern studies taken to Japan. This is my sleeping room, and where it's also a mess because of all the samples, all the materials.
So this is part of the lab too. Clearly, Martin is not someone who cares much about home comforts and has turned his house into a scientific research base. This is a historical ladder too. I'm going to have to be careful. Yes, all right, so everything's here, including Dutch clogs.
Yeah, the old ones, the broken ones.
So you've been coming here for 30 years, but how long do you stay each time you come?
2 months. 2 months is, I come with the birds and I leave with the birds. And I also try to have a little bit of life back home in the Netherlands. So my wife says 2 months is okay, longer we don't like too much.
But do you think of this place as your second home?
Yes, it is for sure. This is what I call my farm. Because with the geese around and things like that, I'm a long generation of farmers. So I think I'm also not leaving the fjord, I'm staying in this fjord. So this is the area I'm going back every year. And I'm perfectly happy with seeing the changes and following the changes just in this small area. And so, but after 2 months, I need to go home, and there I also have a small hut and a garden, so I'm doing the same over there too.
What a great view.
Yeah, beautiful view. Yeah, the glacier, the Conway Glacier.
That one over there?
Yeah, we go there tomorrow.
The scientists weren't the first inhabitants of Ny-Ålesund. A century ago, miners lived here. The village belonged to the old coal mining company, called Kings Bay. But now they're in charge of operating and managing the infrastructure for the scientific base.
Hi. Hello. Pleased to meet you. Thank you.
Per Erik Hannevold was head of the Norwegian station for many years. Now he's director of Kings Bay and the living memory of Ny-Ålesund, where he's been living for 20 years.
This whole city was built earlier as a mining city. From the mid-1960s, it was decided to be a research village in the beginning.
Per Erik takes me to what's left of the old mine, which was active for around 50 years. It was closed down suddenly following the mining crisis in the 1960s and a series of fatal accidents.
Here you find still the remains of the railroad carts that was used for the coal mining.
Wow.
Mine.
It's very moving to come here and see all these remains of the past, these huge slag heaps. They tell a story of how people tried to give the land a more human face.
Yes, it started in 1909. Then later, in around the First World War, it was difficult to get coal for some ship owners. So then they started up here again on a more permanent basis. So Kings Bay was established in 1916. When the mines closed, the whole town closed down. There was no activity here. The first that started again was the French station, in fact. And then it was started up a new station for satellites, taking down satellite signals. And Kings Bay was formed again as a company to run this city further on.
So what exactly is the role of Kings Bay now?
First of all, it's to be the owner of the place. Then it's to administrate everything that happens here. And we also facilitate all the different research stations here, from providing the electricity to have water, dining facilities for everyone. And we provide everything you find in a normal city.
So that's what it is now. A structure that scientists can come and work within and where everything is organized so that they can carry out their research in optimum conditions.
That's the whole meaning with it, that they can concentrate on their projects and do their research. For us, it's very important to create a normal world within these environments here. And we watch for the people, see that nothing happens here. Because, as you say, we are very far from everyone. In fact, we are the northernmost city in the world. So we have to take that into consideration of everything you do.
It's very interesting because I can see a sort of allegory here with the planet. First, it was somewhere humans thought they could own and control nature, exploiting its resources. And now, it's become a place where nature is studied and preserved.
Hopefully we have got a little away from exploiting everything till there's nothing left, and start to see how we can preserve it instead.
To live in Ny-Ålesund is to live in a fragile environment, difficult to preserve, and made all the more so by the threat of climate change. The melting of the ice caps has reduced the size of the habitat of Svalbard's 3,500 polar bears, forcing them to get even closer to the village and human activity. Every week, bears can be spotted around the houses and camps. Anne Schumacher and Sonne Muth, two of Martin's students, are here for a few weeks. Anne is an ornithologist, here to watch birds, while Sonne, a biologist, has come to take samples of the water. Since they're working outside of the village, they are forced to carry a gun and a rifle. The presence of bears is always on their minds, reminding us that humans cannot take their safety for granted.
Avipef for Sonne. We are leaving town now. Okay.
Everyone here puts a lot of thought into how best to preserve nature, while at the same time protecting themselves against its dangers.
Sonne, could you come? Or I can also go to you. I see a strange spot, but it's not moving.
Probably a rock.
Probably a rock, but I just want you to check with me. Let me see.
No.
Are you worried?
Right.
Sure, it's always best to check.
The village is really like welcoming, but nature really isn't. So polar bears want to attack you, the birds. So nature doesn't invite us here. It doesn't want human beings here. When I arrived, there were two of our colleagues were trapped on an island with a polar bear. And suddenly one of the colleagues said like, "Oh my God, there's a polar bear." And it was just 100 meters away from them. So when I arrived, we heard on the radio like, shit, we've got a polar bear now on this island. And if you arrive and you hear that, you think like, no, this is reality. These bears are really around.
Both of you only come here for a short period of time, and you're not carrying out the same scientific research. So how do you manage to fit in here?
Everyone here is doing something different. So you meet a lot of interesting people and you talk about your research and you get new ideas. And
we arrive and you go there for dinner or lunch and everybody asks you like, hey, welcome, what are you doing here? So everybody is very interested in each other, but also if you feel like, hey, we can work together, we can collaborate. Yeah.
The whole scientific community of Ny-Ålesund comes together every day in the village canteen. You can hear all sorts of languages, but as long as science is at the center of the conversation, everyone seems to understand each other. The canteen is the focal point of this unique community, a friendly place where everyone meets at fixed times 3 times a day to exchange and share their experiences. Frederick Ekstrand is the youngest chef in the team and is in charge of these gatherings. He's been living here all year round for the last 2 years. Hello, Frederick.
Hello.
How are you? Well, I don't imagine that sweet potatoes grow in Ny-Ålesund. How do vegetables get here?
We have a little bit of locally grown food. Of course, we have the fish from the fjord, the cod, and also the haddock. But vegetables don't really grow in Svalbard, so we have a small herb garden in the power plant, actually, which we try to use sometimes. But now when we are so many in the village, there is no chance for us to produce for everyone. So almost everything is imported from Norway. Okay.
Let's go. I love the smell of garlic.
Everyone does. It's the best smell in the world.
How many people are you cooking for at the moment?
Right now in the village we are about 130.
All right.
But then again we have plane almost every day, so it's a little bit up and down.
I suppose that the atmosphere is completely different during the winter.
Yeah, it's completely different. It's like two different worlds. To start off, like now, the sun is up 24 hours a day, and then in the winter it's down.
Of course.
So it makes for a completely different place, and also it's only about 30 people during the winter. Some people like it very much. Some people have problems with the darkness. Right. But yeah, it's totally different.
I get the impression that food is a vital element in the life of this scientific community.
People are out in the fjords for the science. They are up on the mountains, but we gather everyone in the cantina for the mealtime. And of course, this is very important to keep everyone together. Otherwise, we would barely know each other.
Okay, everybody ready? Let's go. There's a sports hall in the village which helps bring the residents closer together too. Every evening, in summer or winter, Frederick leaves his apron behind and comes to play hockey with multinational teammates. It's 11 p.m., but the sun is still shining as if it were midday. For 6 months, the sun never sets. In winter, however, it's the opposite, with 6 months of endless night. I can understand why strict guidelines are important here. They help create regular everyday routines to make up for the lack of clear indications of time. The following morning, Martin has arranged to meet me for a boat trip to the Kongs Fjord, also known as Kings Bay, a few nautical miles from the village. We are joined by Anne and by Verena Mauhaup, head of the Franco-German station. 3 nationalities for one mission. Their goal is to gather valuable information on the behavior of different species of birds. Martin and his team carry out this painstaking work every year during the migration season.
5 fulmar, 1 kittiwake. 5 fulmar and 1 kittiwake. Okay.
That's a bird cliff with kittiwakes and 5 young foxes.
The fjord is enclosed by 4 immense glaciers, which stretch out over a dozen kilometers of the island, and whose ice can be as thick as 400 meters. In the summer, it's the ideal place for thousands of birds to come and feed.
Here you see it fall over there, very big. It's constantly falling and there's fresh water coming in and the small animals are brought to the surface and all the birds are gathering here to feed. And so what we try to understand the importance of the glaciers. But they are retreating massively. We just passed the line 2.5 kilometers down. That was the line in 1994 where the glacier front was. Last year, 2016, we would have been in the middle of the glacier here. So this is just 1 year, this distance, 400 meters.
So it melts very, very quickly.
Yeah, it's related to climate change too, but also the water is warmer, and it just breaks down the glacier, so it's going back, back, back. But it's very important for the birds in the fjord. And earlier, they did have to fly a short distance to the glacier from the nest, and now they have to fly more than 3 kilometers more, up and down, so 6 kilometers more each trip. So we're trying to find out how they cope with all this change.
What's interesting is that, generally speaking, when we talk about climate change, it always seems to be an abstract idea. But here we can really see the effects of change with our own eyes.
Here, 2 degrees difference is the difference between ice or water. So it's dramatic over here. And then actually also the increase in temperature is much more in the Arctic than in other latitudes. And so that made it also that I could continue for all these 30 years with my study, because so dramatic change, we have to tell the people about what's happening here.
To some extent, what we can see here with the birds and the melting of the ice caps tells us a lot about our own ways of life, our ways of consuming elsewhere in the world.
Climate change is not caused by the factors over here. We make it happen in Europe, and then the consequences are here. And back home we don't see it, but we're changing the world, we're changing our refrigerator. And it will have tremendous effects later on our weather in France, in Europe, but at the moment it's happening here already, and when you see it, it's just dramatic.
Listening to Martin talk about his work, I realize that he doesn't live just in his house, but in the whole of his surroundings, with the sea, the fjords, the glaciers, and with the birds. Being a scientist doesn't just mean producing knowledge about the world, it's also about a way of living in it. After our boat trip, Verena has brought me right outside the Franco-German station. Every day, at the same time, she launches a meteorological weather balloon into the sky. This enables her to gather local data, which can be shared with weather stations across the world in order to analyze temperature variations. As with Martin, her activities in this isolated part of the Earth are inextricably linked to the global state of the planet, to human activity and its effect on the climate.
Everything's tied on.
So let's go.
Let's go. And since it's you holding the balloon, you're in charge. You say 1, 2, 3, and on 3 you let go.
Okay, right. 1, 2, 3.
There it goes.
It goes up really quickly.
Good.
That's my first balloon launch. That's beautiful. And how high can it go?
It can go up to 30 kilometers. It'll go up and up and up and inflate, and then it'll explode.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay, we can still see it. It's beautiful.
Yes.
It seems to me that everyone's work here is based around the question of climate change.
Maybe not everybody, but a large majority, yes. Yes, especially in this particular place. Climate change has such a vast impact here that many, many scientists are working on it.
Why did you choose to live here? Because it's quite an unconventional way of life.
I think that everyone who comes here, especially permanently, comes for the thrill of adventure. And it's true to say that the social life in the villages is really something quite special too. We all know each other. We're very close to one another, and that's very rare in normal life.
I can see that there's a very strong sense of community here, and that everyone is concerned.
Yes, living together and getting on with each other is very important for all of us, and it's very nice.
Martin's work, as well as that of his colleagues, might seem remote from our own preoccupations, but it has a direct link to us.
I can never tell someone how it's really here. It's extremes. It's a place of extremes. Going out, being completely alone, being in town, completely social, and sometimes, being here to slow down a little bit to make it all comprehensible, because otherwise it's almost too big. This is maybe where human minds evolved in this landscape to think about how you should live here.
When I arrived in Ny-Ålesund, I thought I'd find myself in a far-flung corner of the earth, completely disoriented, where I could escape from my everyday worries. But it's nothing like that. This magnificent wilderness forces us to face up to our own contradictions. The dramatic effects of our ways of living, consuming, producing, and traveling are reflected back at us, as if from a magnifying mirror. Beautiful parts of the world are disappearing before our eyes, compelling us to question what exactly we need to do to make the world inhabitable, and to learn how to share the planet with all its living creatures. My name is Philippe. I'm a philosopher, and I'm interested in how architecture shapes and defines our lifestyles. I'm taking you with me to explore some of the most unusual living environments on the planet, to better understand what's behind them and share what they have to offer. I'm in Malmö, Sweden's third largest city. At the beginning of the 1990s, Malmö was on the brink of bankruptcy as a result of the decline of its naval shipyards and of its car industry. But in barely 20 years, the city has undergone a spectacular transformation with large-scale projects, such as the Orson bridge, linking Malmö to Copenhagen, and the huge offshore wind farm, which provides electricity for half the city. There have also been innovative initiatives, vegetal roofs, rainwater harvesting, and renewable energy. Alongside these projects, the city authorities have set up numerous participatory schemes to encourage residents, including those less well off, to rethink their way of life. Malmö is a remarkable example of a city that has implemented its ecological transition, going straight from being an industrial area to one made up of eco-districts. Augustenborg used to be a particularly run-down working-class district, but has now become one of the most attractive places to live in the city. It's where I met Gunilla Eriksson, a resident who's heavily involved in the area's community projects. In her view, ecology is as much a question of community life as it is of eco-sustainable habits. This is where she lives. Gunilla!
Hello, Philippe. Welcome.
Thank you very much. This is special. All these apartments built around a big central courtyard.
Yes, it's different. It's an octagonal building designed to encourage social life. There's a shared central interior courtyard where everyone can meet up. Those who live on the first floor have an outdoor balcony. The idea is to facilitate communication and access.
When you first came here, it wasn't for ecological reasons. This is something that came later.
Before settling down here, I didn't know much about ecology, but I've always loved gardening, and I wanted to carry on growing plants here. So the question was how and where to start in Augustenborg. What's more, the residents considered the neighbourhood to be fairly drab, so we had to convert it. So in the autumn of 2012, I created a group. There were 20 of us, and the idea was that everyone was welcome to come along and grow plants, strawberries and so on. It was really great fun. In fact, we wanted to be ecological. It's the best thing we can do for our environment. Taking action where you live is the first step, however small it might seem. But if everyone does their bit, it all adds up to a great deal in the end.
Ah!
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Augustenborg had a very bad reputation in the 1970s and 80s. That's why in the 90s we started thinking about solutions to bring the district back to life. We had to think long term and make sure people felt good about living here again.
I really believe that for the ecological way of life to thrive, we have to be able to involve everybody, all those living here, even the most disadvantaged, in a common cause.
It's true that it's a difficult challenge. How do we encourage people to adopt ecological behaviour? It's a new way of life. If you take the example of selective recycling, some people don't understand that different containers should be used. There are people from all around the world living here in Augustenborg. There are many refugees, people who have come from war zones, where they've been staying in makeshift camps for months, if not years. For them, there are more important things than ecology. We need to give them time to settle in, and we need to take the time to talk to them and explain our way of doing things for the benefit of everyone.
In the neighborhood, shared gardens, accessible to all, have sprung up at the foot of apartment blocks. These are not just small market gardens. They also act as places where mediation and social integration occurs.
Hello.
Hello. I'm Philippe. Pleased to meet you.
Ah, you're doing some planting. That's great.
What I find really interesting with these shared gardens is that they are proper community spaces where, in fact, you can find people of all nationalities and people of all ages.
Yes, exactly. In our local group, we have families from all over the world. For example, this is Fioza and her husband, who have come from Bangladesh. And then there's another young woman, originally from Zambia, and another one who's a refugee from the war in Iraq. Throughout the neighbourhood, there are plant boxes like these ones, which are delivered on demand by the municipality and placed at the foot of buildings. Some places have up to 10 or 12 boxes, others only 2 or 3. It all depends on what the residents want.
So all the families working here together, that's nice. How often do you come to the garden?
Quite often.
Yes, but it's my wife who spends the most time here.
What does this garden mean to you? Is it so that you can meet people here, or are you particularly interested in growing things?
Both. I love growing vegetables, and I also like meeting people here, so that I can practice my Swedish.
So those are beans, aren't they?
No.
No?
No, those are peppers, and that's squash, spaghetti squash.
Okay. So why do you come to this garden?
I grew up on a farm, and I miss the countryside. So I need to be in contact with plants, a little bit every day.
Is this neighborhood, here in Augustenburg, a place where ecology is really promoted?
Totally. And we can go even further. There could be so much more urban horticulture.
One of the most important innovations in Augustenburg is the vegetalization of a number of the city's roofs. This technique has been developed on a large scale, on the top of old garages, converted into a municipally funded research institute. John Block is the landscape architect who was in charge of the project.
In all, there are 9,500 square meters of vegetal roofs, all in different styles. And it's important to point out that in the past, this district, along with others, was very exposed to flooding due to heavy rainfall.
Okay, but what's the link between vegetal roofs and flooding?
At ground level, the city has more and more concrete and other impermeable surfaces, which don't allow water to get through to the soil. So to make up for this, the idea was to create new green surfaces on the roofs. The water can then permeate better. That's what vegetal roofs are for.
The ability to absorb rainwater depends chiefly on the nature of the soil, doesn't it?
Exactly. You mustn't forget that a vegetal roof is artificial. We try to imitate the different types of soil because permeability depends on the substrate. The deeper the substrate, the more it can absorb water. If it's only 4 or 5 centimeters deep, it can only absorb 40 to 50% of the annual rainfall. These vegetal roofs have several layers. First of all, they must be watertight. So for that, we put in a bottom layer of geotextile fabric. And on top of that, we add a layer of drainage material, which helps not only to drain the water, but also to keep it in the small cells.
That's funny, they look like egg boxes. Okay, and then a small...
Yes, then we have a second layer of geotextile, over which we spread the soil for the plants.
Is absorbing water the only function of these vegetal roofs?
No. It's also about increasing biodiversity in urban areas and helping local plants, which otherwise would be in danger of extinction in cities.
In my opinion, we've excluded nature from towns and cities for so long that we're in real need of spaces like this one to help redefine and perhaps reinvent the relationship between urban areas and nature.
Yes, absolutely. I was trained as a landscape gardener, and so I believe in an aesthetic approach to garden roofs. We must allow ourselves to be creative. It's not just a question of vegetation. It's also about combining plants of all different colors to replace the drab, dark shapes that roofs normally have.
Further north, on the seafront, the Västra Hamnen district is Malmö's first eco-neighborhood. In contrast to Augustenburg, it was built from scratch in 1995 out of the ruins of the old naval shipyards. Its homes and public spaces are all equipped with sustainable technology, making the district a showcase for living areas of the future. Christer! Hello! Delighted to meet you. Christer Larsson is Director of Urban Planning in Malmö. His work involves defining the eco-districts and meeting their challenges. What are the main characteristics of the Västra Hamnen eco-district?
There are many. For example, heating and energy consumption. We have a reservoir which collects water and recycles 100% of it. We also have a system which recovers filtered rainwater, which is then sent back through the system. Lastly, on the transport side, pedestrians are our first priority, then cyclists, then public transport, and lastly cars. And even then we encourage car sharing.
An eco-district such as this one is not just a collection of technological measures. It's above all about including a great number of people in a shared vision.
Yes, it's a vision and a new way of thinking for the whole of the city. We look at sustainability in all its aspects. We treat everything from a holistic point of view. It's important to reconstruct the sustainable city in its entirety, with different social strategies for different neighborhoods.
This social dimension is absolutely essential because one of the problems regarding eco-districts nowadays is that generally only well-off inhabitants benefit from them. How do you think it's going to be possible to help create more social diversity?
First of all, public spaces should be accessible to everyone. In this district, environmental performance is very high and housing is expensive. So we're working to make this area easier to afford with apartments at reasonable prices. And we're trying to break down physical barriers because otherwise they become psychological ones. It's really important for us in Malmö that this area becomes accessible to absolutely everyone.
I've come to visit Nikolai Shishkov. He's an engineer who has been living in the Västra Hamnen district for 3 years, with his wife and 2 children. Along with their neighbors, they've been testing the new eco-technology.
Hello, Philippe. Shall we go up?
Okay.
So this is our apartment.
It's very nice.
Yes.
So, this is an experimental apartment, is it?
Yes and no. It was experimental for 3 years, but now the experiment is over. We're living in it for good. The experiment consisted of testing out different energy technologies, which could be used in any type of housing. Here, for example, in our apartment, we tested out electric heating, whereas some of our neighbours were using biogas, and others central heating.
A whole range of measures, such as renewable energy, solar panels, wind turbines, water and heat recovery systems, and selective recycling, were integrated into this building.
We'd been looking for ages for a different way of doing things. An eco-responsible way of life. And when we heard about this project, we realized that it was possible to do without having to give up any comfort.
In my opinion, if we want an ecological way of life to flourish, we have to show that sustainable development is really and truly compatible with a high standard of living.
Absolutely. And in fact, we have just as much comfort, if not more, by living a more eco-responsible way of life. Often, when our friends come to visit, they're surprised and say, "Oh, so it's true that it does work." And maybe this will encourage them to think about similar solutions for themselves.
It has to be said that the technology here is invisible, and that the aesthetic values are more important. The private pool, filled with filtered rainwater, is autonomous from an energy point of view and improves the family's everyday comfort and quality of life.
The aim is for these apartments to be as pleasant to live in as possible. And what really attracted us were the plants and trees all around. It's such a special feature. It feels like we're in the middle of a forest.
The eco-district of Vastrahamnen has had access to the best architectural and technical know-how. But it left me wondering if it doesn't make its residents a bit passive. For me, ecology is not just about high-performance clean energy. It also involves the wider questions of solidarity and contributing to society. This is what motivated Safija Izmirovic, a resident of Augustenborg, when she started a children's play center in 1997. With unemployment high in the area, the idea was to promote help and support among families, and back this up with transmitting ecological values. What made you want to set up this play center?
I arrived as a refugee from Bosnia in 1993. I was a young mother with 2 children, and I couldn't afford childcare or a nursery for them. So I had to do something. I went around the neighborhood seeing if other women had the same needs as me.
Okay, so everything came about from this movement of solidarity among women.
Yes. And today we have children of 10 different nationalities here. And they come from every part of Malmö. Our teaching project is based on 3 principles: ecology, economy, and living together. So we have a garden with animals such as rabbits and children.
All right then, show me. Ooh, what have you got there? That's great. Those are beetroots. And those lettuces are beautiful. Oh yes, they're so lovely. That's really great.
It's important that children can see how fruit and vegetables are grown, how we pick them, and then that they should be allowed to take them home and cook them. What's good is that they help to grow them, and then they eat what they've produced, and that they learn that lettuces and dill grow in the ground and don't just fall from the sky into plastic sachets.
Come here, I want to show you something.
What do you want to show me? So what is it? Okay, come on then, pull! Oh, there's nothing there. It's a phantom potato.
We planted tubers here and watered them, and then they're going to turn into potatoes. But this one's not ready yet.
What do plants need?
Sun, earth, water, nutrients.
Okay, and here in these boxes, do you put lots of chemical products that help them to grow quicker?
No, that's not good for the plants. Let's take this one, the last one.
Okay.
Oh, look, there are some potatoes.
Yes, and look, there's another one.
Oh yes, there are loads of them. Look.
We can make a potato salad.
Okay, that's it, no more. Take this.
Potato salad. With dill, that's a great idea.
Or potato gratin with chicken.
In Augustenborg, a lot of housing is old and run down. Residents aspire to a more modern style of architecture. The greenhouse building, inaugurated in 2012, is a symbol of the future for the district. The tower block has state-of-the-art technology and is run collectively, where people take part and come together to chat. Gunilla came with me to meet a friend of hers, Agneta Timotei. Ah, you can see the sphere down there. So do you like coming here out of the rain and meeting up?
In the summer, this is like the living room. We meet here, we eat together, we have coffee together on Sundays. There's always someone around to water the plants. We share things as a community.
What I find amazing about this tower block is that it's not only an eco-tower, but that it's built around the idea of ownership, that the residents can all participate and help to transform things as they wish. Because normally, tower blocks are technological entities which are very strictly controlled.
When you move here, you sign an ecological contract as well as the actual rental contract. You must promise that you will selectively recycle, that you will do some gardening. If you don't want to grow anything, you cannot live here. So, from the outset, you know all about the common interest. It makes it easier to say, hello, would you like to take part in this group? And so, in fact, everyone takes part. And everyone can see this space from their terrace or their balcony. We're a community. Sometimes conflicts have to be resolved, such as when someone takes all the onions or the zucchini. So we talk about it. And sometimes children start picking fruit and vegetables before they're ripe. So we have to teach them not to do that. Those are the challenges.
If you want to take part and grow and pick things and so on, you first have to have a dialogue with the others and establish the ground rules. Little by little, people adapt. The children get older, and we're able to talk about things more and more.
If eco-districts are to develop more around Europe today, in the hope of creating energy-efficient, sustainable cities, Malmö has shown us how environmental ecology is inextricably linked to social ecology. Without the involvement of local populations, including the most vulnerable, the technology will be of no use and die out. Because true sustainability is characterized by the links that humans build around them, through dialogue and hospitality. In this way, a shared vision of living together in the city can be created for each and everyone.